Hey guys, and welcome to the Sassy Talks. This is another episode that we bring to you, and we have a very special guest. I know I call every guest that comes to my podcast special, but this is internationally special. For the first time, we have someone not from India actually coming from directly from the United Kingdom, a place that I went, I loved. And this is Sophie, the general manager of Hubilo on site, leading Field Drive at the moment. Field Drive, as you guys, if you guys don't know, and Field Drive is a event tech company, and we're going to hear more about Field Drive from Sophie directly in this podcast session. The idea for us is to, utilize the 23, 24 years of experience that Sophie has in especially, majority of the times being spent in the events industry to understand what events actually are and how it can impact individuals and businesses. Welcome, Sophie. Welcome to the Sassy Talks.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Pleased to be here.
Absolutely. It's been a couple of months since we've been trying to get this podcast, and finally the day has come, and I'm pretty excited, to have this wonderful session the next probably 30, 60 minutes with you. So we're going to dive deep in right from the beginning, Sophie. Um, you have been a part of the events industry for a very, very long time, and I think you've seen it all, right? From working with pre-seed, seed kind of startups to bigger enterprises. You've seen it all and seen it everywhere. I think you also have your own entrepreneurship experience in the event field for a while, right? So I think in and out, almost everything, and that's what me, and probably the viewers that will be watching this podcast would love to understand from you. So let's start with that. Why are events important for any business?
I think very simply, I'll go into more detail, but in one sentence,
Yeah.
events drive growth. And more importantly, events drive revenue growth.
Oh,
So
nice.
that in summary is why it's so important. So they're obviously a part of the marketing mix. They're another channel within your bag of tools, often underutilized, but I feel that with the pandemic, it is being more utilized, the events as a
Right.
channel. Now,
Right.
within that, you've got the relationship aspect. So through events, it's really the only piece of the marketing mix where you really go and meet people, you build those relationships face
Right.
to face or online, and you're getting to know that person holistically, whether it's a customer or a prospect. You're building deeper relationships, which, of course, as we know, lead to better business relationships and
Right.
also advocacy. But secondly, you can still, particularly now in the last few years, get your data and analytics as well. So you can see how it went in a very scientific way, just like any other marketing channel, which wasn't really happening up until a couple of years ago. So you
Right.
can know who came, what did they do, how did they behave. So within that, I think you have to split it to external and internal. So for example, if I go to a trade show and I
Mhm.
exhibit, so Field Driver exhibiting at IMEX in a couple of weeks in Vegas, a very important event for us to exhibit at. So
Mhm.
when I go to a trade show as an exhibitor, that's one channel for me as a business to get leads. So I'm going
Right.
to go there externally and I'm going to find out how many leads am I going to acquire at that event? How many of those are going to convert?
Yeah.
What's the average time for it from a lead into an opportunity, from an opportunity into revenue? And you start to build that picture out. So you've still got the
Mhm.
lovely data scientific part of it that you would get
Yeah.
from paid media or another channel. But the difference is you also have the relationship part. And then when I say
Agreed.
internal, I mean where you organize it yourself as a company
Okay.
for your customers or your prospects. So it could be an
All right.
experiential event, or it could be, closed door event. It could be for existing customers for expansion and
Hmm.
upsell. It could be for lapsed customers to re-engage, or it could just be purely top of the funnel new business. And it's up to you, to decide. But I think whether you do it in any of those ways is just such an important part now of the marketing mix as a channel.
Absolutely. I think you've defined it really well, why events are important. So one point you right, like I also feel like as an individual that, when the pandemic hit is when events actually started coming up a lot, right? Was there a particular reason for the rise of course, virtual events came into picture during pandemic? events and trade shows all have always happened, right? But we started seeing a lot more companies picking up events and bringing it into their marketing mix during the pandemic. Was there any particular reason for this rise during the pandemic? Because uh, obviously earlier you could meet people. I feel, was that the reason? Like, you could meet people, and then, for the next 2 years there was nothing. Um, uh, any thoughts on that?
I think I always say there's two types of events. There's those people who own events, that's their business.
Yeah,
So where I've worked in the past, like Informa, they own the trade shows. Or there's those who use events as part of their go-to-market.
right.
So if we're looking at the latter here, which are probably most of your audience, they're companies with marketing divisions, how they use
Yeah,
events. I think, to your point, firstly, people were all stuck at home
yeah,
and they were craving that connection. So events were still giving that human connection. They were still giving
yeah.
the relationship part that I talked about
Hmm,
in the
hmm.
beginning. Online, they were still feeding that, and also through LinkedIn and stuff. Think how many
Yeah,
connections we all made during that time. We were missing human contact.
yeah,
Secondly, the need to drive pipeline was still there.
yeah,
So they weren't able to go to maybe the in-person events to drive their pipeline to exhibit. They had to still fill it. And
yeah,
all the other channels were operating, but they were missing the events piece. And what virtual events gave and taught everyone, even in in-person events, is this piece around data and behavior. So
yeah,
and from a MarTech point of view, you can just hook it up straight away into your CRM. Hubilo, who of course is the parent company of Field Drive, we've launched a really fantastic webinar product, which is
right.
very much aimed, into the MarTech space. And you can literally see who's attending, how are they behaving. You use it for demand gen, you can use it to funnel, all of those things. So I think, to your point, people really got in the habit. They were missing human connection, they were missing building their pipe. But then they found
Right.
this new way that really became more of a pure play MarTech
Yeah.
rather than event tech.
Right. So I think the problem, like many other traditional marketing channels, was attribution with events, right? And that being solved with virtual events gave that rise, of course, right? But Field Drive works for on-site events, right? The
Yeah.
offline ones, right? How does attribution work there? How does what you're mentioning, right? The data analytics part, how does that work in an offline environment?
Yeah, so I mean, it's got better
Yeah,
on-site event tech than
I'm
it
sure.
was 3, 4, 5 years ago. And the one thing that Field Drive and that we're really pushing and that we've got on our product roadmap is around data and analytics.
Right.
So what we can tell you, which is really important, and don't forget, registration is the first part of the attendee journey.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So when they get to the venue and they get to the registration point, how do we create the most memorable experience? And that's what Field
Right.
Drive is all about. And then
Right.
from there on in, you can see how many people came in at what time, how long were they in the queue for,
Right.
what cohorts came in. So when you split your visitor registration form, you might say, this is micro community and category or sector or ICP1, this is ICP2, this is ICP3.
Yeah.
So you can start to really deep dive into who are the people who arrived first? Are there any patterns there? How can we accelerate that for future event design or even for monetization? How do they behave once they're in the hall? Are they staying an hour? Are they staying for the full 5, 6 hours? And then if they've got conference sessions, how are they behaving? Are they going into the sessions? Are they staying for the full sessions? Because Field Drive also provides session scanning. So we will scan those
Interesting.
going into conference sessions. So now we're knowing
Nice.
not only how are people behaving when they get there and at what time and when and which ICP, but also how are they behaving when they're in the hall. And then the
Right.
other piece we have is lead retrieval as well. So
Okay.
you have an event with exhibitors. Obviously, most of your revenue stream is from your exhibitors. So
Right.
how do you make sure your exhibitors are getting the ROI? Well, really, they need to be capturing every lead that comes onto their booth. So we provide lead retrieval app. Exhibitors can scan the attendees coming on their booth. And as I was just saying, it hooks up real time into a CRM. So you can
Nice.
start to message, your prospects. The exhibitors can message their prospects immediately. And that links back to what I was saying, that if I, as Field Drive, go to IMEX with a booth, I want to scan everyone who comes on my booth and I want to immediately follow up so that my
Yeah.
competitors aren't following up with them first. And we can start
Yeah.
to funnel them and convert them as quickly as we can. So I think that that's something that Field Drive offers, is this lead retrieval piece, which is powerful, session scanning, how people behave in the hall. But more importantly, right at the beginning of the journey is where it all starts.
Right. Amazing. That's actually very interesting. I think a lot of people wouldn't know about the advancements and the evolution that has happened in the on-site events as well. And uh, is events before I move to the kind of impact that events have on businesses. Could you talk about are events like for a company to host their own events, as you mentioned, like that's one, like, or set up a booth. Is that an expensive fare? Is there a stage that a company should reach before they start looking at events as a marketing channel?
So the first thing I would say is probably to almost go like one step back, right? So they should obviously, market map, who is your target ICP? What is the sector? What is the region?
Yeah,
How are you going to get in front of them? How many leads do you need to generate to get to the revenue? All the stuff that we know. So you've got
yeah,
all that. And then you almost have to go, now what's my budget and how am I going to split it? And
right.
I think then you go, now I've done all that. I've ring fenced this amount for the events channel. And then you split that again. You go into another deep dive and you say, I'm going to do X amount on internal webinars. What by internal, I mean, customer or prospect webinars that you own.
Yeah,
I'm going to do X amount of maybe experiential meetups because I want to target someone in New York. That's going to be a big area. So we're going to do experiential meetups to our
yeah,
really targeted group of people. And then the other bit will be, and I just want to piggyback and exhibit at a trade show
yeah,
where you need to look at where are your competitors, really deep dive on their sales brochure, who are the attendees, where are they coming from, are they from your target ICP, and so on. And then you basically have to collate all of that before you even start to plan it. And then you have to make sure it's integrated to your other channels. So make sure your paid media is linked up with it, which we do really well with your guys, by the way.
yeah,
Make sure it's linked up with your social media. Make sure you've got some advocacy in there. Make sure you've got some email blast, email nurture. So basically, you're syncing the whole thing. So it's almost like you take the full step back, then you go into events as a channel, then you deep dive that, and then
yeah.
you piece out how it's going to sync with the rest of it.
Right, right. Just similar to any other marketing channel, like you build out that entire funnel and make those informed decisions.
Exactly. It's
Right.
exactly. And I think that's the point, right? It's so simple, but people actually still, I guess, mentally don't see events as that pure play marketing channel. And it is exactly the same as any other channel.
Right,
But I
right,
think
right.
it's overwhelming because there is so much
Yeah,
choice. Do you go in person? Do you go virtual? Do you do it yourself? Do you go to another booth? And that's why I think it's so important to take that step back and try and understand your macro picture for the year,
yeah.
what you actually have to achieve as a business, and then how is events going to support that? Because there
That's
are
true.
so many ways, and if you confuse it or you try to do too much, you'll get nothing. So you're almost better off just doing a couple of things with a light touch to start, see
Yeah,
how it plays out, A/B testing like any other marketing channel, see how it
absolutely.
plays out, and then you can sort of build on it.
Right, right, rightly said. So yeah, so you mentioned about you've been, a couple of times you mentioned about different types of events that exist, right? One is where as a company I host the event for my ICP, right? And also invite my existing clients, of course, right? Basically my ICP, right? And obviously these are not really if HubSpot is doing is obviously, it's a huge event, but if a smaller company compared to a HubSpot or Salesforce does it, it's not a like as you mentioned, like it's something like an experiential meetup, right? So that's one, right? Second is where an event company is organizing an event and where you as a company can go and exhibit on a booth, right? And obviously the third is the virtual angle to all of this, right? Where again you can do your own virtual events and then you can also do your own as a set up a booth or go as a speaker or attend a virtual event, right? Can you break this down like in different types, because these are absolutely different from each other is what I understand, right? Doing your own event, going and as an exhibitor. Let's stick to on-site events only. um how is the impact different, and how should be the thought process of what I should do. Because we work with a lot of SaaS companies, as you know, right? And we started seeing, a lot of SaaS companies also started, even HubSpot, everyone, yeah, and even the smaller companies have started investing in hosting their own meetups. We started seeing founder dinners. We started seeing meetups, right? Obviously, these are not huge scale, but I still feel this is events and this is for lead generation, right? How do you think one should approach what should be done, apart from, understanding your own yearly objectives and things like that? But how should I segregate? Should I do my own meetup? Should I do my own event? Or should I, look at doing being going as an exhibitor? And how does it impact my business?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to think firstly, um, what and why. So I was talking to an industry friend last week about this, and she
Yeah.
was saying, rather than ROI, go ROO, return on objectives. So linking
Hmm.
to what I said, like what are you actually trying to achieve as a business on a macro level, and then there's a
Hmm.
marketing team on a macro level. So what are you
Yeah.
trying to achieve? Is it, have you got new product features, new product? Is it purely just to drive the sales pipeline? Is it to re-engage with lapsed customers, or is it you've got basically the 80-20 rule? 20% of your revenue, 80% of your revenue is coming from 20% of your customers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you work all that out, so say it's that latter piece, and you go, do you know what? This 20% customer
Hmm.
base, if we really get close to them and we double or triple the revenue year on year, we're looking at exponential growth. So we're going to have a series of closed door meetups with these core customers, and it's going to be value add to them as well, because we're going to create, external speakers, or we're going to create a networking exclusive FOMO club where they're going to meet with senior peers in their sector,
Hmm.
and people love that. And
Yeah.
we're going to be the matchmaker. We're going to be the facilitator, not just there to sell our product as an industry partner, as really under the skin of the industry and understanding them. So you're going to get way closer to those customers. You're
Yeah.
bound to get expansion revenue because you're now going to understand their needs, their pain points. You're going to hear them having other conversations.
Yeah.
It's going to be like gold dust. You can translate it into content messaging and positioning and even product roadmap and everything.
Wow.
But they're going to
Wow.
love you because they're going to think, these guys, they're at the heart of the industry. I can trust them. They know their
Yeah.
stuff. They know their stuff. So that's one angle. And you can just have this closed door club with your elite 20% customers that are driving the bulk of your revenue. And you'll get their advocacy, because if they're the big boys and they
Yeah.
love you and they're sharing on social about you afterwards, the medium and smaller from an aspirational level going to look up and
Hmm.
go, I need to be part of that club. How do I get part of that club?
Yeah.
So you're now creating pipe as well, in a way, as keeping your really top customers happy and renewing and expanding and advocating. So that's one
Hmm.
angle. And then if you look at it purely from a top of the funnel point of view, you could do, of course, you've got Salesforce doing Dreamforce and stuff like that, but you could
Yeah.
start that smaller. You
Yeah.
could have, again, an event with a different vibe to this closed door, exclusive club. You could have it as more an open networking. You could have like cool speakers coming. You could have 100, 200 people, and they could all be brand new prospects. You get your sales
Right.
guys in there, and it's more of a sales play, and you host them and you take them for drinks, and you might do an experience and all of
Yeah.
that. And then how you design that event would be very different to how you design the first event I mentioned, of
Right.
course. And then you could also do ones, say you've got a bunch of lapsed customers who you really need to re-engage with, and they're not really
Right.
coming back to you, but they're relevant, they're your target ICP. So how do you re-engage them? How do you use events to re-engage them? So I think you'd almost want to split it that way in your customer
Nice.
base if you're doing it yourself. I think if you're doing external and you're, exhibiting, again, you're better off doing one or two or three really well than
Yeah.
spreading yourself too thin, because there's loads of hidden costs. You've got the travel cost, the hotel cost,
Right.
electricity, catering, all these things that people forget to budget for because they just think they've spent the money on the stand, the booth, the
Yeah.
build. Then actually, and I know this from as an organizer, that's only 50% of your budget.
Yeah.
So you're better off just doing two or three and doing it really well and starting the campaign 2 months before, making sure you've invited as many people as you can, doing things around it, like dinners around it, maybe a wine tasting the day before with 10 top customers. So really maxing out that week while you've sent your sales and a couple of marketing people to an event and you've spent for their travel, just max that out and then hammer the leads and the follow-up. Because often what happens is you spend an arm and a leg and you go somewhere, you get all these lovely leads, and then they get waylaid, they get back to the office, more paid media leads are coming in and no one's really touching those leads.
Right.
So what was the point? So you're better off doing less, but doing it really well and maxing out every opportunity and every lead.
Right. Amazing. This was really, really insightful. I think you just broke it down into minute details and gave some tips around how one should approach these events. Thank you so much for that. Any examples of any company that you have really loved?
I have a couple that are competitors of ours, so it's hard to say. And one of them in particular does it really well. They have 2 massive event meetups throughout the year, and they do their booth really well. So I can't really touch on what they do. The one thing I will say is, even as Field Drive, so I can talk it as from my own perspective here, we have got literally thousands of leads from what we've done this year at events. And we're building up to IMEX in Vegas. And we take our events really seriously. So we really prep it. We integrate the campaigns. We're working with your lovely team at Growth Spree in terms of targeted ads to the people we want to meet at Vegas. And we did that at our last event at BizBash. So a big tip to anyone watching is, if you're working with Growth Spree, or if you're not, you should be working with Growth Spree. But, please work with Growth Spree in terms of make it an integrated campaign if you're exhibiting at a booth, because you guys will work with us. We'll say, we know from the app these people are attending, and then we'll send targeted adverts to them, and it really, really works. So that's one thing I really like that we're doing. We've got great leads. We are funneling them, but us ourselves, I think, are guilty that the sales team are not following up. God, kill me if they watch this, on time, with visibility. And, it's great. You can get as many leads as you want, but if you haven't got visibility of what happens thereafter, there is no point generating them. So that's another good thing, I think. But every time, like everyone else, we do an event, we get better at it. So the other thing I'd recommend is have a key learning sheet, have a post-show report, have a post-event debrief, and say what worked well, but what could have been better, because there's always something you can do better. And then particularly if it's the same event you're going to next year, you're going to have your playbook, but write a playbook. And each time you go to an event, tweak that playbook. And I think that's something that we do. But look, I really like what Dreamforce do. I think, they've really sort of almost set the mold there of how you can really do it. And then you've got inbound, of course, and I think we're going to see more of this to come, actually.
Yeah. Awesome. So let's talk more about Field Drive, and you lead the entire front for Field Drive, and you've from the very beginning you have been responsible for building that entire engine, right? The revenue engine, as a matter of fact. Would you mind sharing more about your experience in Field Drive, and how did you approach things? How did you move? Like what was the thought process in building the marketing engine for Field Drive? How did you plan that this is how I'm going to start reaching out to, these are my ICP, and this is how I'm going to start reaching out? Then of course, as you mentioned, right, where did events and when did events come into picture? Was it from the very beginning that you were confident that I need events as a part of my marketing mix? Anything that you don't mind sharing with us would be lovely.
Yeah, sure. I mean, when we acquired Field Drive, Hubilo acquired Field Drive towards the end of last year, we only announced it early this year, they really hadn't had a marketing function. So they had been doing events, which I'll come on to, but nothing really was there. So myself and Tej, who I know works really closely with your guys, who's a legend. He's our marketing director. Love working with that guy. Anyway, we had to sit down and really understand what had happened to date, and where were we. So it was all quite brand new. So of course, We had to understand our list size, our total universe, GDPR universe, and where did we need to build. So we went back, as I said, and we looked at who's going to be our target ICP. We defined that it was going to be any event with attendees over 1,000, preferably more than 2 a year, and preferably to start within the UK, Europe, or the States. So that's who we need to get in front of. These were the previous biggest customers to date last year. So we sort of modeled that out. What did that look like? Who were they? And then what we did was we just started to build lists. So Neil and Tage's team just build lists every week, like he's a machine. And then we nurture those. And then we had to get an SEO agency on board. That wasn't happening. We're building a new website as we speak. We needed to find a paid media agency, and you guys were recommended to us. And I think we started working with you in about April time. And of course, because it was brand new, as we know, it takes a while to optimize and understand which keywords and performance and so on. But we've really, really optimized it now. And the last month was incredible. But also we have to get into the weeds. We have to get into the analysis. So we have to understand like what is, because it was so new and there wasn't any previous history to look at. So we had to really understand what is going on. It was like a launch sort of business, really, from a marketing point of view. And so all the channels, as you can imagine, we got SEO, we got organic and paid, and then events. So, and of course, loads of email nurture, as I mentioned. But with the events, we looked at what they did last year, and they actually did do a couple of events last year really well, with good leads. So we booked those again, like IMEX, I mentioned in Vegas, IMEX in Frankfurt, BizBash. But then we also looked at other events potentially that we could do. And we're just about to launch a webinar series for the reasons I mentioned, hosted on our Hubilo webinar platform, and it plugs straight into our CRM. And Hubilo have also launched content snippet. So you can really snip it up into bite-sized pieces and use that for content marketing and demand gen as well. So from an event point of view, interestingly, it's still proving the most number of leads. However, the conversion from leads to opportunity is actually higher through paid and organic. So we get more in terms of volume, but less is converting. So as we know, now we just have to really deep dive into that and visualize where is it going wrong in that part of the funnel. So, and that's why I say to anyone, like when you go to these events, you might get more leads, but they've got to be followed up. So that's something. So basically, and there's so much more than we did, but I won't bore you. But this year has really been a building and forming year, setting up all the campaigns and the channels and such.
Amazing. So one point that I picked up from what you just mentioned, with regards to, just because you've done events for so long and you've seen other companies do as well. If I just have to ask you, as an estimate, if you can tell me, if I'm going to an event where I know my ICP, like at least 70-80% of the people coming in are a part of my ICP, right? Do I get hot leads out of the event if I put a booth? I think this is something that, a lot of aspiring companies aspiring to do events are looking at. Will they be able to generate direct business where if they put a booth? Have you seen that happen? Or is it more like you get leads, but you need to follow up a lot?
So, so basically, I've worked in events. I've run events in so many different sectors. So firstly, I think it will also depend on your sector, how quick. Okay, so it's not like a one size fits all, but I have seen deals getting signed on a booth.
Oh my God.
For many years. I've seen it happen all the time. Depends what sector you're in. Secondly, even IMEX Vegas last year with Hubilo, my colleague Pratik was actually signing RFPs from people we hadn't even booked appointments with, just walk-ons. Wow. One of them was over 100 grand. So we had the head of events of Amazon pop in and stuff like that. So
nice.
So you absolutely can use events to get hot leads, because if they're your target ICP, they're your target region to all the things we talked about, unless you're doing something crazy, like I can't imagine, you'd have to be completely in the back of the hall. Don't go in the back of the hall. That's the top tip. And have done no marketing whatsoever. And for the show to have died and there were no visitors. So, obviously go try and get a good stand location and all of those things and market yourself. But even if you don't get appointments, which I highly recommend you do, you will still get the serendipity of it. You will still get people wandering by your booth. So make sure your sales team are trained. Don't get them, because worst thing, and I've spent 20 years training exhibitors on how to exhibit. Sitting on their phones, on their laptops, the sales guys talking to each other, looking like they're in a meeting, even though they're with each other. The visitor's not going to pop by if the sales team are all talking to each other or they're all on their laptops. You've got laptops away, phones away, stand on the booth. If you're not already talking to customers, stand at the front of the booth. Just say hi to people walking past. It's that simple. Hi, do you want to learn more about what we're doing? It's that simple. But if you sit there like this all together, no one's going to come on your stand. So there's a really big thing. If you want to get the leads, top tip that I've been teaching people for 25 years about, look friendly, interested, and that you're not in a meeting. And, and if you want to eat, go somewhere else and eat. All those simple things, make it look inviting. Just think, if you're you as a human, and you're walking past a booth you might be interested in, but they're all talking amongst themselves or on their laptops, are you going to walk up to them? You're not, are you?
I don't think so. No.
Exactly. No. But if someone's standing there and they're like, oh, hi, how are you? Where are you from? You're going to talk to them. It's human nature. Right. Business to human. I always say, people say business to business, business to consumer. It's gone way beyond that now. It's business to human. You're still selling to humans, and what do humans want to feel? They want to feel welcome and part of something, and they want belonging. And that actually plays also to what I was saying earlier about creating these clubs and these meetups. Create this sense of belonging in your community and in your marketplace. But you need to do that at an event as well. I think if you do all that, you're going to get leads.
Amazing. I have so many questions now. One, would you talk about how the booths should look like? I've not been to a lot of events, but the 2-3 events that I've gone to, including SaaStr in London, I've seen people go berserk, right, with creativity. Does that really impact, or is it more about, the people standing there and how they are driving the conversations? Because my counter argument to this is, even if you don't have a very, very highly creative booth and you're not spending money on, having probably serving coffee or popcorns, right? Or, getting a basketball hoop and all of those stuff, right? that I've seen. People will still walk by, and as you just mentioned, right, if you're standing there and you're greeting them properly and you're trying to have a conversation, it will still click, right? So what's your thought, right? Should there be a balance, or should you actually go really, really creative with the kind of booth you're putting up?
I mean, that's an interesting one, and it also depends on your budget and the size of your company. So let's just say, for example, you're a medium-sized company with a medium-sized budget.
Right.
The very least, even if you can obviously choose a turn up and exhibit package from the organizer, or you can go space only where you build your own booth. Yeah. Either way, the more open side your stand has, the better. So even at Informa, sometimes we used to charge more for more open sides, because it depends what show we were doing, but it's that popular. So if you've got one open side and you're like this, and you've only got one open to the aisle, it's harder to get that visibility, and it looks a bit intimidating going into those closed booths, unless you're in a row of like tech stand pop-ups, and then that's okay. That works well. But if you're just like a little tunnel stand, never have it deeper than front. So if you're going to go 3x3 or 10x10 in foot, that's okay, but never go like 10x20. It looks like a tunnel, and it's intimidating for people. So if you can get at the very least 2 open sides, so you're open 2 to the aisle. 3 is, of course, great. 4 is what you call an island side. That's where you start to get in the bigger booths. And then I think you can do the activations you're talking about, and they're better. However, I have seen people spend so much money on an island site, everything, all whistles and stuff, and their sales team aren't trained. So their sales team are still talking to themselves, are still on their laptops, they're still eating food, they're still not paying attention. So I think whatever you do, get as much open side, and I mean open side to the aisles as you can. Yeah. Try and get into a central location. If you can't, try and get near or the entrance or the exit, or a catering area, or a conference theatre where you know there's going to be footfall. And whatever size you are, train your sales team, and you need to have trainings before you go on site and on site. And someone needs to be there to keep them in check, because their natural habit is they'll go back on the phones and stuff. I know that sounds crazy because they're going to get leads, but I've seen this over 20 years. So, and have competitions, right? Who did the most pre-book meetings? because then the sales team have to make them. Who did the most walk-ins? So that means the sales team are on their feet inviting people in. Maybe walk-ins get more, money even, and you give them even like $50 a meeting. I don't know, whatever it is. You have a leaderboard, you gamify it, you make it fun. And you make sure each day you send that to the CEO and you go, this is our sales leaderboard with the sales team in copy, and that's going to make them pay attention. I can tell you that. So everyone wants to be the number one. Everyone wants the CEO to go, well done, you did the most leads at the event.
Yeah. Amazing. These are amazing tips, Sophie. Very honestly, like genuinely, because for us also events, attending events and putting, going as exhibitors has also become a part of our marketing mix, at least, and we're going to increase doing that. So, hearing these thoughts specifically, such a simple point that you need to be trained before you go to event. I don't think a lot of companies, I don't think maximum companies actually train their salespeople for events. It is more like, even when I went, I was like, it's an event. I'll go and talk to people. That's it. But I failed. In my first attempt, I couldn't really bring out any kind of results. It became awkward towards the end for me, and I came back disappointed, right? And just now that you're saying, if I would have prepared even like 7-10 days before the event, just to obviously it was my first event, so it was all new to me, but at least in the coming now, I know how events look like, what happens on events. I think if I am getting someone with me, I think there should be a good amount of training before they come and experience, because it's entirely different. And in most cases, I don't think people have experienced such an environment before in their lives, right? It's so this is such an important point, and I think almost everybody misses out on this.
Yeah, it's true. And even simple things like if you've got an offer, or what are your, again, return on your objectives? What are your 3 messages you want to get across that week? Is it a new product feature? Is it, an M&A you're doing, whatever, rebrand, whatever it is? So everyone says the same thing as well. So people are taught what to say and what to do on those stands. It really works.
That's nice. That's really, really nice. Another question related to events. Now, as an individual, right? This is booth, right? As an individual, I don't have, let's say I'm a small company, I don't have the budget to set up a booth, right? And then you've seen smaller companies also, utilizing events, right? Companies like us, for example, like we go to events, we attend events, because any which way for us, the budget of traveling and, the hotels and the pass of the event is what we have, right? We don't have another, thousands of dollars to spend in a booth, right? So, what I felt, and I want your thoughts on it, is that even then there is still a lot of placement that I have on my body that I can utilize my appearance. Do you think, and have you seen that work as well? Do you think it's a good idea, or we can simply walk in with a branded, like a logo of the company with a t-shirt and just go in? And I'm going to give you some context. Personally, it worked really, really well for me. So what I did in an event a few months back in Bangalore, I wore a t-shirt and I put a tablet, like an iPad, on my t-shirt, right? And for us, in the iPad, there was a continuous video that was playing, which were testimonials from our clients, right? So they were like detailed testimonials of a client. What it helped me is I got all inbound, right? People came to me and talked to me rather than me trying to, start a conversation with anyone. I think I talked to almost everyone that was there. The second appearance that we decided for, a couple of more folks that went with me from our team, we had because we actually, you don't need to hire a marketing function if you have growth spree, right? And I'm sure you're experiencing this, right? So another t-shirt said, stop hiring in-house for marketing. Hire us instead. Think that also worked really well for the other 2 people. For 3 of us, we got people talking to us. I think we talked to every person that, almost 1,000 people came to that event in the 2 days. I think we talked to almost everyone because of this appearance. Have you seen this happen a lot? And how do you think, this impacts? Like, I have a personal success story, but do you think it works out every time, or it's okay, you don't really have to spend a lot of mind and bandwidth on deciding this, and you just go with a logo and see drive conversations?
No, I love that. I love that, because look, anything that makes you stand out, at an event, because just think about it. It's like loads of white noise. You go into a hall or whatever, there's so many people, everyone's trying to sell something or do something. How do you do something different? And I think to continually be creative is hard. And I think what you did is amazing. And I think that even if people because it is hard to constantly be creative, but the first thing you did was you said what you did on the tin, the old saying, say what you do on the tin, say what you do, because you'd be surprised at how many, unless you're like the biggest brand in the world, not everyone knows what you do.
Absolutely.
So a lot of people actually don't even say on their booth with a strap line or one sentence who they are or what they do. So even if it's not as cool as what you did, or even if it's a t-shirt that at the back or something says what you do, like don't have your in-house marketers come to us, whatever, just have that message and reinforce it, because it should be on your booth, it should be on you, to your point, it should be everywhere, it should be on your build-up messaging, because otherwise everyone's walking past and they don't even know if you're relevant. The first thing I do when I go to a trade show is I look at the pop-ups or the design on the booth to see if the words in there are relevant to me. So I'm not going to go up to every booth and go, Absolutely. So I think that is so powerful that you did that, because so many people don't even think to do that. And I think that, now you'll have to keep reinventing.
I have to. It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure to deliver again.
You know what you should do is just do it at every event, and that's your thing, and you become famous for it. And own it.
They started calling me Tab Man. Everybody in that event. And there was another meetup. I was also called a weird guy, but I was like, I'm fine with it. I'm getting a lot of leads.
I know. Exactly. Call me what you want. I'm getting my leads. Just like literally, I reckon for you should wear that every event you go to, and it becomes your thing. And actually, as Grow Speed grows and grows, it becomes synonymous with.
That's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah, that reduces a lot of pressure of my mind.
And it reduces you thinking about it.
Exactly. I've been thinking about the next idea for almost a month and a half now, because we're going to be planning a few meetups, and obviously starting of the next year, a lot of events are going to come in. It's a lot of pressure. It's as you mentioned, it's hard to be creative every time. So Sophie, it's been a pleasure having you on this podcast. And there's one final question that I never leave any of my clients that come on the podcast go without, and that is a few words that describe your experience with GrowthSpree. I know in between only you've shared some good words about GrowthSpree, but just to end, so that I can cut out a short video out of it, just something. How has the experience been with GrowthSpree?
I mean, it's been wonderful. It's been amazing. So I start with the people, because life is about people. Your team are brilliant, and they really listen. So what a lot of people don't do is listen. So they really listen to myself and Tej, our wonderful marketing director. Like, what are we trying to do? What were our objectives? What are we trying to achieve? Who are we trying to get in front of? What's our budget? How can they maximize that budget, and how they can partner with us? So to your point, we are a team. So I would say they are part of our marketing team. We are one team. We work really well together. We have a weekly, it started off as a weekly catch up to see how the week went, but it's become like a brainstorming session. So every week we look at like what worked, what didn't work, what can be better. We've started with some new creatives, because you guys also do amazing work with us on the design side of things and the creative side of things. So what creatives, what design pieces are getting the most traction? We double down, we iterate, we do loads of A/B testing around that. So we just work totally in sync as a partnership, as a team, and we look at every avenue, and every week it gets better as we learn more, and we optimize better. And also everyone's just so lovely as well.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Sophie. This means a lot. The team has been behind me for taking a podcast, hosting you on this podcast session. And they all love you. They love
Oh,
working with you and Tej. It's been an amazing experience for Growth Spree as well, working with you, and the kind of help and the kind of learnings that you both of you have helped the team. It's eventually helping me out grow the business, right? So thank you so much for that, and I hope this remains like a long-term relationship between us, and we keep growing, just like we have many more months like we had the last month for Field Drive.
it was amazing. Anyone watching, we doubled our lead target, which was fantastic. And they were really good leads as well. So thank you
Yeah.
for that.
All right. Okay, Sophie, thank you so much. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet you.
Same here. Bye bye.
Bye.